Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today we are going to get into some series that I started in 2023 that I'm going to be DNFing. So this video is going to kick off the 2023 end of year videos, which I cannot believe we are already here again. So yeah, this is going to be the first entry. I'm going to create a whole playlist, and just from now until the rest of the year, I'm going to be uploading those traditional end of year videos, and it's all going to lead up to the best books of 2023. I love doing this every single year. It's always so exciting. So yeah, welcome to the first video of series I'm not going to be finishing. There is actually one series on here that I'm still kind of on the fence about, but just as of right now and really in the near future, I just don't really see myself picking up book 2, but the door is definitely not fully closed on this book yet. Just there's not really a desire right now. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let me know down in the comments which series you don't plan on continuing on with, and yeah, let's get into it. Series I don't plan on finishing is the Vagrant Gods series by David Dalglish, and I read book 1, The Blade of Faith, earlier this year. This wasn't for me. So The Blade of Faith is a multi-POV story, but our main character is this young man named Cyrus. When he was a child, he saw his parents murdered in front of him, his god was murdered, and the Empire just came in and took over his small island. And then the story skips ahead, and when Cyrus is a little older, he is rescued by this rebel group, and they take him in so he can start his training, gain his strength, become a really talented fighter, so he can come back and take back what's rightfully his. I think this book just plays it a little too safe for me. There's a lot of typical fantasy tropes in The Blade of Faith, but just for me personally, I don't think this book did a whole lot to distinguish itself from the many other times that we've seen these tropes used. I do think it was just a little trite, quite honestly, a little bland, the way that it was executed. Cyrus as a main character just never really grabbed me. Luckily, this was multi-POV story, so I did get attached to some of the other characters in it, but just Cyrus as a lead, I don't think he was a strong lead character. I also did have issues with the prose in this book. Sometimes it would flip between that really traditional fantasy, old school prose, and then you would have more like modern dialogue, or sometimes more modern phrases would be in the prose. And it was just a very awkward balance for me. Not my favorite reading experience of the year, and yeah, I just have no desire to see what happens in book 2, which is unfortunate because I remember the ending to book 1 was kind of explosive. So yeah, just not for me. Next is the series that I'm on the fence about. I don't dislike this book necessarily. I'm just not really that invested in the characters and the things that were happening in this book. But there is like a small inkling of curiosity that is like, I could see myself picking up book 2 just to see how things shake out. And that is the Drowning Empire series by Andrea Stewart, and book 1 is The Bone Shard Daughter. I thought this world was really interesting, but there is something about the cast of characters that you'll see that this is a common theme throughout a lot of the books that I did not like in 2023, that the characters just really didn't do a whole lot for me. This is another multi-POV story, and of all the, I think there's like 5 in total that we do end up circling between, but of those characters there is only one, and he's like a smuggler type character. He was the most interesting character to me in this entire story, but the magic system in this I thought was really interesting, and I did actually enjoy watching that system unfold, watching the world unfold as I kept reading the story. This world is made up of a lot of different islands, and when you're born in this world, a bone shard is taken from behind your ear to contribute to the way that this empire uses constructs, and the constructs can be created. They're almost like abominations, but they're created for a lot of different reasons. They can be created to defend the empire. They can be created to assist with political matters. And our main character does not have a lot of her memories. Throughout the story, you're just trying to, work through what she can do. You're trying to work through mysteries in her past. And as that's happening, you also have this rebel group that is starting to rise as well. So I did think the world and the magic had its interesting moments, but I just wasn't the biggest fan of the cast of characters in this. But just the way things left off, I would be a little interested to see how things play out. But just as of right now and in the near future, I don't really see that happening just yet. The next series I'm DNFing is the Powder Mage trilogy by Brian McClellan. This was a roller coaster of a reading experience. I just remember really enjoying it. I was so sucked in by the magic in this. This is a powder-based magic system, and I just remember thinking it was the coolest thing. I was loving it. But then, as the world started unfolding a little more and I started getting more comfortable in the world and understanding the magic a lot more, I started focusing more on the characters and the actual story that was unfolding. And I was like, oh, this is not very interesting. This cast of characters, they weren't it for me at all. There's a character in this, Tennille. Every time we were back in Tennille's POV, I was just like, take me out, get somebody else on the page. I just was not a fan of this character at all. Like I said, this is a gunpowder based magic system. This whole story has like a very French Revolution era vibe to it. And our main character is this General Tomas. Tomas begins this domino effect throughout the entire story because at the very beginning of the book, like first chapter, he is staging a coup against the current king. And once this coup is finished and the previous king is overthrown, the rest of the story really becomes about how do we lead? How do we govern? Where do we go from here? But there's also people in Tomas's circle who are not entirely trustworthy. And we're flipping through all these different characters. One is an investigator because there's also this mystery element to the story happening. I don't know. Once I just had the magic system down and was more settled in the world, I was just finding that I was not as interested as I thought I would be in the rest of this book. I also think the way that female characters were portrayed in this were just noticeably very awkward. I just remember one of the characters was a cheater. The other young female character was almost raped on multiple occasions. The other one was the wife to the investigator. And every time he thought of her, it was just like, oh, she used to be so beautiful. And then the other one, who actually had the most depth to her and was the most interesting character of the entire cast, was a mute. So this was just such a weird reading experience overall. I do have the first book in Brian McClellan's new series on my shelf, so I do want to get into that, but Powder Mage is just not for me. The next series I'm DNFing is the Pandominion series by M.R. Carey. And the first book, Infinity Gate, actually came out in 2023 and I read it earlier this year. I liked this book, but I really thought I was gonna love this. I love The Girl with All the Gifts. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And I was just so excited for the new M.R. Carey. I was like, this is gonna be amazing. And it just felt a little short. The world and the premise of this is really intriguing, but the actual story is not. This is a sci-fi dealing with the multiverse, multiple dimensions. In the book, there's all of these different Earths and they're governed by this system that kind of keeps everything in check called the Pandominion. I really do love the hard rules in this book. So like, for example, if you're in a particular spot in London in one Earth and you step to another Earth, or they call it step, you are gonna step in that exact same spot in that Earth. Like you can't step from London to Chicago. I wanted to get more into the actual exploration of these different Earths, how the Earths differ from each other, just really get in the weeds. The story itself I just thought was a little bit on the weaker side. Our main character is a scientist and she starts discovering that you can step between these worlds, and pretty soon this AI technology threatens to destroy everything and put all the Earths at risk. That's pretty much the foundation for this story, but again, the world and the concept is really interesting. I just really wanted to get more in depth about the different Earths. I liked this first book. It's not amazing, but I definitely do not feel compelled to know what is gonna come next. The next series I'm gonna be DNFing is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This was a fun, very entertaining read. Obviously, I am not the target demographic for this book, but I just personally feel like a little bit too much time was spent on this romance and this main character like thinking all of the guys in the family were really cute and all this kind of stuff. I'm just like, let's stick to the puzzles. Like the puzzles were so interesting and it was so fun watching things unfold, but I feel like a lot of unnecessary things, unnecessary to me, began to get in the way of all that and really detract from the excitement of this entire mystery that was taking place. But in this, we have our main character, whose name I forgot already. She struggles to make ends meet. I think she's like a junior in high school, struggling to make ends meet. And things take a wild turn when she finds out that this billionaire left her pretty much his entire fortune. But in order to claim the fortune, she's gonna have to solve his puzzles and solve this riddle and live in his family home while she does so. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I think an easy comparison could be like, if you like Knives Out, you know, read this book. It definitely has that vibe going for it, but again, I don't know. I think it spent a little bit too much time on the main character juggling these really interesting puzzles and then being like, his eyes are just so beautiful. I'm like, oh my God, girl, there's like $1 billion on the line. We gotta focus here. So it was an entertaining story, just ultimately not for me. And personally, I feel like this does not need to be a series. I feel like this first book could have stood on its own perfectly if, I don't know, if maybe there were like 3 extra pages in book 1 or it was just plotted a little differently. There's no way this needed to be dragged on for however many books. The next series I'm not finishing is a book I just recently talked about, and that is the Books of Babel series by Josiah Bancroft. And I recently read book 1, Sinless Ascends. This is my worst book of 2023. I did not like this book at all. I thought it was incredible. I'm not gonna go too much into this. I just thought this book was incredibly boring. Even now, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why the premise of this is so intriguing, but the execution of it just falls completely flat for me. I just think Senlin as a character is just not very interesting to read about and not a good character to carry this entire story. I thought all of the different levels in the Tower of Babel were really interesting, but again, just the way that it's conveyed to us, the way that it unfolds, I just thought it did not make for a really engaging reading experience. If you do want to hear me ramble a little more about Senlin Ascends, I will link my previous video in the description box for you guys to go check out. But yeah, this is this is not for me. I thought this was incredibly dry. And then last but not least is the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros, and book 1 is Fourth Wing. This is like the bookish phenomenon of 2023. I could not escape this book. I'm sure you guys have seen this everywhere. You know, I didn't despise Fourth Wing or anything. I really love the dragons in this. I always say the dragons are really well done. They were my favorite aspect of this book. I just personally don't get on with the tone of this book and the way that it's told. This is first person, so we're in our main character Violet Sorrengail's head, and Violet's inner thoughts, just the way that she thinks about things, her thought process is just so young, like young to the point of being distracting sometimes. It really does not work for me. I will say the writing is not what I personally look for in an adult novel, and I'll just leave it at that. I also think the exposition in this book is not very well done. The way that Violet relays information to us is just very clunky. I feel like this book is also just a combination of so many things that we've all read before, but doesn't really do anything differently than those things that we read before. I can't. This is another one that I can't wrap my head around. It's very entertaining. It's very bingeable. I can definitely see why people love it. If you have just somehow escaped everything to do with Fourth Wing and don't know what this is about, this is the story of our main character, Violet Sorrengail, and she attends this war college. Her mother is the general of this war college. Violet has trained her whole life to become a scribe, but her mother, who is the general, is like, no child of mine is going to be a scribe. You are going to be a dragon rider. And so she makes Violet go into the dragon riding portion of this school. There's a lot of trials that they have to overcome to actually be able to, you know, claim their dragon at the end of it. And also there's just plot elements in this book that are very glaring and do not make for the smoothest reading experience. You just are asking yourself so many questions. I feel like the world building is a little murky. I don't know. Fourth Wing, it's entertaining. I will give it that. And again, I love the dragons. It's just not for me. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Again, let me know down in the comments which series you started this year that you do not plan on finishing. Let me know if you've read any of these, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.